Hello and welcome to the Indiana Lawyer Podcast, your source for news and Hoosier law, brought to you by Taft. I'm Alexa Shrake, Indiana Lawyer Reporter, and your host this week. As always, I'm here in our Monument Circle studio with Managing Editor Daniel Carson and reporter Maura Johnson to give you the rundown on the latest legal news. Plus, I chat with Tony Paganelli, Managing Attorney at Paganelli Law Group, about the state's attorney shortage. So, let's get started. Today's Wednesday, September 18th, 2024, and these are your headlines. To start, Maura, you have news from Lafayette. What can you tell us?
A Lafayette-based trailer manufacturing company must pay $462 million to the families of two men killed in a 2019 crash involving one of the company's trailers. A St. Louis jury handed down a decision in favor of the victims' families on September 5th in the Circuit Court of the City of St. Louis. According to court documents, in May 2019, a Volkswagen driven by Taryn Taylor collided with the back of a trailer manufactured by Lafayette-based Wabash National Corporation. The Volkswagen went under the trailer, and the trailer's rear impact guard failed. The crash killed Taylor and his passenger, Nicholas Perkins. In the lawsuit, the victim's family said Wabash was negligent and manufactured a defective product, which was then involved in the crash. In a release posted to its website on September 6th, Wabash said the crash occurred nearly 2 decades after the trailer was manufactured in compliance with existing regulatory standards. The company said the jury was prevented from hearing crucial evidence in the case, including that at the time of the crash, the driver's blood alcohol level was above the legal limit. The jury was also not told that neither the driver nor the passenger was wearing seatbelts at the time of the crash, despite plaintiffs arguing the men could have survived had the vehicle not broken through the rear impact guard, Wabash said. Wabash's general counsel and chief administrative officer, Kristen Glasner, stated in the release, quote, "While this was a tragic accident, we respectfully disagree with the jury's verdict and firmly believe it is not supported by the facts or the law. No rear impact guard or trailer safety technology has ever existed that would have made a difference here," end quote. The company said it is evaluating all legal options in response to the verdict.
Thanks, Maura. Also in the northern part of the state, a settlement has been reached with a South Bend apartment complex by the Office of the Attorney General. Cedar Glen Apartments tenants didn't have heat or hot water for weeks to months over a 2-year period. Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita said the settlement was a little more than $10,000, which is less than what his office usually reaches. He said the main reason for the lower settlement amount is that the landlords cooperated with his office. Porter Township trustee Jason Critchlow said the township's trustees will continue to monitor the situation at the complex, especially this winter. He also added that the state needs better laws to protect tenants. Chase Howler, the head of the Homeowners Protection Unit with the Attorney General's office, said at a press conference announcing the settlement that Hoosiers are facing unprecedented housing challenges. Moving over to Daniel, who has news about a former East Chicago police commander.
A former East Chicago police commander convicted of providing cocaine to an associate was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. Louis Arcuri, 55, of Portage, was sentenced by U.S. Northern District Court Judge Gretchen Lund after pleading guilty to distribution of cocaine. Arcuri was sentenced to 36 months in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. He has been in federal custody since February 29th. According to documents in the case, Arcuri was on duty and armed as an East Chicago police commander on June 11, 2021, when he provided cocaine to an associate. In its sentencing memorandum to the court, the Indiana Northern District noted that Arcuri provided these drugs not only while he was an East Chicago police officer of more than 30 years, but also while he was on duty as a commander in the patrol division of the Chicago Police Department.
Thanks, Daniel. Next, Maura, what can you tell us about your recent sentencing?
The mother of a 13-day-old infant who died after co-sleeping was sentenced to 30 years in the Indiana Department of Correction. According to the Vanderburgh County Prosecutor's Office, Taylor Alexis Smith was found guilty by a jury in July for neglect of a dependent resulting in death, possession of methamphetamine, unlawful possession of a syringe, and possession of paraphernalia. Her August 26 sentencing stemmed from events that took place on June 8, 2022. That day, police were called to a home in Evansville for a report of an unresponsive infant. Despite several attempts to resuscitate the baby, he was declared dead on scene, court records state. Police said the home itself was extremely unsanitary, lacking running water and a proper place for the infant to sleep. Smith reportedly admitted to using methamphetamine recently and co-sleeping with the child. The infant, Wade Wilson, was born on May 27th and tested positive for meth at birth. Smith continued to have contact with her child while actively using meth, despite orders from the Department of Child Services and the Vanderburgh County Juvenile Court to do otherwise. She also continued to co-sleep with the baby. The infant's father, Timothy Allen Wilson, was also charged with neglect of a dependent and drug charges in connection with the case. He's also been charged with reckless homicide. Wilson will go to trial in October. Vanderburgh County prosecutor Diana Moore said in a news release, quote, "Baby Wade will continue to be in our hearts, and his precious short time here on earth will inspire us to continue working to ensure we keep babies safe and hold any who do not uphold this duty accountable." End quote.
Thanks, Maura. At the beginning of this month, a former Indiana Department of Child Services attorney was suspended from the practice of law for forging signatures of family case managers in children in need of services petitions. According to an Indiana Supreme Court disciplinary order, Robert Miller was a staff attorney for DCS and worked for the office that covered Newton and Benton counties. He was responsible for preparing and filing CHIN's petitions, which have to be verified. Miller filed 38 CHIN's petitions for a year with the signatures of FCMs without their knowledge or permission. The petitions were filed between April 2022 and April 2023. DCS fired Miller after learning of his misconduct. The parties stipulated in the conditional agreement that there wasn't any evidence that facts alleged in the CHIN's petitions were falsified other than the signatures. The High Court wrote that more severe discipline was warranted, but the court considered Miller's career in public service and lack of prior discipline. Miller will be suspended for 120 days from practicing law beginning October 11th, with automatic reinstatement once he serves the suspension. He was also ordered to pay $250 for the cost of the proceeding. There were 2 abortion-related rulings in the state last week. Daniel, tell us about the one out of Marion County.
A Marion County judge dismissed a case that sought to overturn the state agency's decision to exempt terminated pregnancy reports from public record, though an appeal in the case is almost certainly guaranteed. Superior Court Judge Timothy Oakes ruled in favor of the Indiana Department of Health, which stopped sharing the reports following the state's adoption of a near-total abortion ban. The state agency believes the reports are medical records and could be used to identify people seeking abortions due to the level of detail required and the small number of procedures occurring. Among the data collected on the terminated pregnancy reports, or TPRs, is the age, education, and marital status of the woman, the date of the abortion, gestational age of the fetus, race and ethnicity of the woman, as well as the city and county where the abortion occurred. They also list the name of the doctor, which outside groups have used to file licensing complaints. The Indiana Capital Chronicle reported Oakes praised both the Department of Health and Plaintiff Voices for Life, an anti-abortion South Bend group, for well-written briefs and well-presented oral arguments. He said both Congress and the Indiana General Assembly have made their intention to protect medical information clear, but had also made a commitment to transparency. The ruling adds that Voices for Life, quote, may very well find relief in an appellate court's analysis or, more likely, at the Indiana legislature, end quote.
Thanks, Daniel. The Monroe Circuit Court has denied a motion for a permanent injunction against Indiana's near-total ban on abortion. The American Civil Liberties Union of Indiana initially filed a lawsuit challenging Senate Enrolled Act 1 in September 2022, shortly after the law was passed. SCA 1 prohibits abortion in Indiana except in limited cases of rape or incest, fatal fetal anomaly, or to protect the life or health of the pregnant woman. The ACLU of Indiana targeted the portions of the law that are related to the life or health exception and elimination of abortion clinics, claiming they violated Article 1, Section 1 of the Indiana Constitution. Special Judge Kelsey Hanlon wrote in the order that the plaintiffs hadn't shown the statute, quote, materially burdens the rights of any specific patient or well-defined class of patients to access constitutionally protected abortion care, end quote. Hanlon did acknowledge there was significant and compelling evidence on the policy implications of the statute and its effects on medical professionals. And finally, to wrap up this week's headlines, Daniel, tell us what you are working on for our next print issue.
I will have a story on a new law, HEA 1447, that took effect at the beginning of 2024 and allowed the state to put in place procedures for challenging books and requiring school libraries to prepare a publicly available catalog of materials. The story will see what impact that's had and how many books have been challenged at school libraries. You can read all about it in our September 25th issue.
Okay, that'll do for this week's headlines. As always, if you want more legal news, check us out at theindianalawyer.com. Stick around after our sponsor break to hear my interview with Tony Paganelli.
Taft, today's modern law firm. At Taft, we cultivate a highly respectful, transparent workplace that fosters creativity, teamwork, inclusion, and diversity. We couple our culture with a client-first approach, rewarding lawyers who understand their clients' goals and work to deliver success. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
I have with me today Tony Paganelli, managing attorney at Paganelli Law Group. Tony founded PLG in 2013, and the firm has now 2 offices in the Hoosier State, one in Indianapolis and another in Bloomington. So to start, Tony, tell me a little bit about how the firm has grown in the last decade.
Hi there. Thank you very much for having me on. So I guess the best answer to the question of how the firm has grown is that it's grown mostly by surprise. I never set out to form an actual law firm, let alone one with almost 50 employees so far and offices in 2 different counties. For much of my career, I had been litigation partner, first in Indianapolis at a firm called Summer & Barnard, which grew to about 100 lawyers. In 2008, Summer & Barnard merged into the Taft firm, which was then primarily in Ohio. I think we were their first office out of Indiana. And I woke up that morning, instead of being a partner at a firm with 100 lawyers, I was a partner at a firm with about 300 lawyers. I stayed there for 5 years after the merger. And by early 2013, we had grown to about 450 lawyers. And I'd been in the same place for 15 years. And it seemed like a good time to try something new. And at my wife's encouragement, I hung out a shingle in my spare bedroom. Literally, we bought a used dining table, and I had a laptop and a phone, and we were off and running in the spare bedroom. And I got very lucky and the phone rang. The phone rang some more, and I actually had some clients. So after about 3 months, I moved out of the spare bedroom into a very small office that I thought I would never outgrow. I actually signed a 7-year lease there, and we outgrew that after about a year. So I traded up to a bigger office in the same building. That one had room for 5 lawyers and a support staff. We were really fancy. We had a kitchen and 2 conference rooms, and I thought I'd never outgrow that one. And that one lasted about a year. So same landlord very happily traded us up again, moved us into the core of what is our current office suite on the top floor of our building. We exercised our first option to expand before construction was done on our original space. Since then, I think we've expanded that office 4 times. And we also now have a dedicated conference space on the first floor of that building. And then this year, we expanded into Bloomington. So it looks like there might have been a master plan, but I promise you there wasn't. We just got very lucky, attracted some wonderful clients, and word got around that we were a pretty cool place to work. So we attracted some fantastic lawyers, and the snowball just kept rolling down the hill.
Yeah. And so, like you said, you opened up your new office in Bloomington this year. How has that been so far? What are the positives about the new office?
It's been really exciting. I'm actually standing in the main conference room in our Bloomington office right now. I try to get down here about once a week. what's been exciting about it is that we didn't just rent office space and hang out a sign. We actually acquired a very well-regarded small firm on the Courthouse Square in Bloomington called Carmen Parker. I've known its partners, Mike Carmen and Angela Parker, for over 30 years. So it's been great working with them and getting to know their staff as we've spent the spring and the summer integrating them into our firm, getting to meet their clients, and getting to meet businesses, government officials, community organizations here in Bloomington.
What is, some of the biggest challenges been so far in, having the new location?
So by far the biggest challenge has been hiring. In particular, hiring lawyers to help us serve the clients Mike and Angela already have. Joining forces with my firm was actually part of their succession plan. They're thinking ahead toward their retirement, and they were struggling to hire lawyers in the Bloomington market. And their hope, which has worked out, at least in the short term, was that the lawyers in our firm up in Indianapolis would be able to help them serve their clients, in part by spending time in Bloomington, like I'm doing today, and like others lawyers from my firm have been doing, and also from Indianapolis, drafting briefs, doing research, working on other documents from there, and then just communicating either by phone or over our office network. But we are trying, as a long-term solution, to hire at least 2 more lawyers in Bloomington. And the market has been incredibly tight. Everything that you hear and read about the lawyer shortage in Indiana is very real. And I think it's worse in the very small rural counties, but it's definitely making its way up to a county like Monroe County, which has a mid-sized city in Bloomington and a fantastic law school literally 7 blocks from where I'm standing.
Yeah, the attorney shortage is definitely something that is on people's minds. The Commission for Indiana's Legal Future recently came out with its interim report, and the Indiana State Bar Association is focusing on the topic at its annual summit. From your perspective, as a practitioner, what do you think of the recommendations that are kind of being proposed on this issue?
Well, to start with, I'm glad they're doing it. According to the American Bar Association, Indiana ranks in the bottom 10 nationally, with only 2.3 lawyers per every 1,000 residents on average. And it actually gets worse if you get into the smaller rural counties. The ABA defines any area with less than 1 lawyer per 1,000 people as a legal desert, and over half the counties in Indiana actually meet that definition. And I've been involved in some of the discussions within the Indianapolis Bar Association about plans to address that shortage. The Supreme Court issued some new policies over the past year. There's been a lot of discussion about those as far as the bar exam and bar admission. And I've had a chance to review the State Commission's report. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. It seems that the 3 primary focus areas in the report are, first, creating economic incentives for lawyers to open practices in rural areas. Second, making it easier for lawyers from other states to practice in Indiana without taking the Indiana bar exam. And then number 3, allowing allied legal professionals like paralegals to do more of the work that lawyers have traditionally done. And I think these are all great ideas.
Is there something that you think could help address the issue that, maybe hasn't been proposed yet or just hasn't been talked of like that much?
I think it's an all of the above answer. We need to do more to keep law school graduates from Indiana's 3 law schools in state. I think we need to do more to incentivize lawyers from out of state to come in. And I think we need to do more to allow lawyers perhaps to delegate things to paralegals that historically have been done by lawyers. So I don't think any one issue is going to solve the problem. And I think we just need to make Indiana an attractive place for people to come and have great law careers.
Since you mentioned, you're having a tough time hiring in the Bloomington office for the 2 attorney positions that you have, are you in contact with I'm kind of thinking the career development services maybe at the Maura Law School?
Literally 3 hours ago, I was in the office of the director of the career services office in Bloomington, scheduling on-campus interviews for us to hire 2 law clerks.
Yeah. Well, that's neat. That's, you're working for it.
I'm trying.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw this. I did look up after I got the email about you telling me about this. I just went to like Maura's like website, and then just got, the homepage, and right at the very first thing you see is they have like their new lookbook for the class of 2023, and it immediately just says that over 60% of the class of 2023 got jobs outside of Indiana. I was like, this is so relevant to what we're talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was at what was then called just the IU Law School in Bloomington 30 years ago, most of my friends came from out of state, and most of them left Indiana after they graduated. It's a very small number of us who were from in-state like I was and who stayed in Indiana like I did. Everything I'm hearing and seeing suggests that number of Hoosiers at the IU Bloomington Law School is going down, and that the number of IU Bloomington or IU Maura now grads staying in Indiana in general and staying in Bloomington in particular is very small. Good for them that they have developed this wonderful national reputation and that their graduates can get jobs anywhere. But I'd love it if a few of them stuck around.
I think that covers most of the questions that I have prepared for you. Is there anything else that you want to add that I didn't think to ask you?
If any of your listeners are lawyers with 3 to 6 years of experience and would like to litigate in Indianapolis or Bloomington, please have them give me a call.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I think that will do it for this week's interview. And to our listeners, head over to theindianalawyer.com to hear our past interviews. You can also find us on your favorite podcast apps. We'll talk to you soon.